sweet fucking God, it's Degreelessness, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Shanghai Pete, 21st Century Digital Boy and the People's Champion. And surprise, surprise, we actually do have a main story this week. At first, we thought we were gonna skip it. Nothing really happened. There was nothing that was, nothing that was really drawing our ire around the office. But then, and then fate smiled upon us, and IGN birthed through its foul sphincter the most egregious, insane piece of shock journalism bullshit I think that we have maybe ever seen, at least when it comes to video games anyway. And after discussing it for a while around the office, we decided that yes, there can be no denying it anymore. We are deep inside a cultural dark age. Yes, friends, whether you're aware of it or not, the cultural dark ages are upon us. So, we thought about it, we've done videos about it, people that actually matter have done videos about it, we've all talked about it, but somehow, incredibly, against all odds, IGN, a bastion of the most idiotic, embarrassing, fumbling, and downright incompetent attempts at journalism we've ever seen, has published something so stupid that they've exceeded their own standards of idiocy. Think about that for a moment. Quite a feat. You may have seen it. The article is titled, "The Era of the Fan-Influenced Movie Has Arrived, and It's Not Good." Oh boy, yeah. Oh no, IGN, it's not good, you say? What's problematic this time? Please tell me. I'll click on any ad you want. I'm so shocked I simply must know. I'm clicking furiously. It's this assault on the concept of journalism that is indeed the impetus for tonight's main story, Why Are Customers the Enemy, Part 2. And also, of course, because we love any opportunity to showcase what an inept and corrupt coterie of scam artist hacks the people that write for traditional media are. But yes, Part 2, you can see Part 1 right here. And because the news cycle these days is so fucking useless beyond all reason, you may have even been wondering, wait, what game is he talking about in that first video? Yeah, that's how inconsequential it ended up being. But it did cause such a huge fucking garbage fire on, yeah, you guessed it, Twitter. But we'll get to that later. So, this video is gonna be a bit of a follow-up to that story in addition to just taking the fucking piss out of IGN just because we fucking hate them. And so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about just what the fuck is wrong with everybody, why the legacy media is so fucking useless, and why we actually think it's probably gonna get better. Yes, that's right. I'm optimistic about something. Insane, I know, but that's why you have to watch the rest of the video to find out. So strap in, this one is probably gonna get a little long. Okay, everybody ready? You rolled the blunt, you tab back in, you got your rations. All right. So, in order to really explain this garbage, we're gonna have to go all the way back to the beginning. We're gonna need to get deep inside a whole bunch of stuff and really take the piss out of a lot of it, which is very fun for us. Legacy media, social media, shills, the movie industry, the nightmare horror show that gaming journalism has devolved into, and much more. It's gonna be fun. But we are going to begin with Twitter. Why it sucks and why anything that happens on there is completely inconsequential and should never be referred to as news of any sort. I mean, unless it's something obvious like a leak or actual facts, you know. But other than that, the fact that there is a platform called Twitter and people say things to each other on it is not fucking news, never should be considered news, and everyone on there that thinks their opinions move the fucking world are retarded. So first, some numbers, because numbers are often the basis for facts. And if there's one thing we need more of in this foul year of our Lord, it's fucking facts. Now, obviously, I know people from other countries than just the US watch YouTube, but to simplify, we're just gonna use US user numbers. So, how many people in the US do you think are on Twitter? The way legacy media behaves, you'd be forgiven for assuming it's like well over 80%. And that, of course, is exactly what they want. People like you thinking that it's some insane number that, of course, plays along with their narrative. But you know what it really is? It's more like 22%. Yeah. Only 22% of Americans even have a Twitter account. Okay, so think about that for a second. That's about 78 million people or so. Sure, that sounds like a lot, right? But then you need to remember that over 80% of US tweets come from only 10% of the users. So the majority of bullshit, flame wars, pointless bickering, and endless posturing that you see on Twitter is coming from barely 7 million people. You know what percentage of the US that is? Fucking 2 goddamn percent. Fuck, bitch, that ain't even enough to fill New York City. All the whiny, entitled, fragile, purple-haired imbeciles and intentionally myopic fools whose tweets you see is the reason for so many disingenuous, moronic attempts at journalism and activism, and more importantly, all the equally retarded people that engage with them, as loud and ever-present as they may seem, are barely representative of 2% of the population. And if you're just counting the people complaining and virtue signaling, you cut that in half, you're barely scraping 1%. Roughly 3 million people. And bear in mind, that's the total amount of people on Twitter talking about anything. What percentage of that number do you suppose are talking about something relevant to the world of video games or movies? Let's be generous and say 20%. So not even 600,000 people. That's not a lot. Are you now starting to see why anyone paying any attention to pretty much anything legacy or shill media have to say is fucking absurd? All you hear is, oh, people on Twitter said this. Some dude on Twitter said something to a girl. Someone was mean to me on Twitter. This person called me a faggot on Twitter. This person doesn't like this movie. This person said they didn't like this TV show. And the legacy media wants you to believe this is somehow a large enough number of people that what they're saying constitutes news somehow, or is even worthy of mention at all. I don't give a fuck what these people are saying. Do you? I don't think so. The very idea that the discourse presented on Twitter or social media is indicative of a worthwhile or noteworthy opinion on any issue on any topic is patently absurd, and you're an idiot if you believe otherwise. Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, Randy Pitchford, these names mean nothing to fucking normal people, and most of them certainly don't give a fuck what any of those sloppy degenerates have to say about anything. But what about Reddit? What about the rest of the internet, your brainwashed, preconditioned, small little mind screams? Well, what about Reddit indeed? What percentage of US adults are on Reddit? Turns out it's less than 4%. Yep, barely even 4%, and that's not even taking into account what percentage of that number are actually posting. I would guess it's not even half that. That's the kind of numbers and influence we're really talking about whenever access or legacy media whinge about internet outrage or backlash. 2% of the US on Twitter, 1% if you only count the whiners, and not even 4% on Reddit. Okay, so please, let's keep these numbers in mind as we go forward, and actually just in general, don't buy the mainstream narrative of whatever absurdist agenda they're pushing when they try to fool you with this social media gaslighting. The reality is, barely fucking anyone gives a shit, and most of us aren't crazy people. Alright, with the utter ineffectuality of the social media influence argument on full display and that myth thoroughly dismantled, let's move on to the reason I decided it was necessary to really get into all this tonight. That insulting IGN article that has the nerve to present itself as a cohesive collection of English words. This article, that we mentioned earlier, is titled, "The Era of the Fan Influence Movie Has Arrived, and It's Not Good." Oh. So immediately you can see the issue here. And no, I'm not referring to the obvious problem of people whose job title is journalists, yet seemingly have absolutely zero interest in engaging in anything even remotely resembling that. I'm referring to the article title itself, which, just like in the Ooblets debacle, before it, and indeed any other customers of the bad guys narrative, is asserting that listening to the input of fans and customers is somehow a negative thing. That sounds so fucking ridiculous when you say it out loud, you can only guess at how much actual thought the so-called author of this travesty put into it. So right away you know where this idiot is coming from. He's a soy boy with sand in his vagina, trying to push a narrative for his dying legacy media platform. So with that fun preamble out of the way, it's time to get deep inside. Movies have always been a collaborative medium. Writers, directors, actors, set designers, and hundreds, sometimes thousands more, you've seen the credits, come together to create a visual work of art meant to entertain, inspire, and connect us as humans. Making a film is a monumental effort, which sometimes turns into something magical, and at other times fails to create anything cohesive. But we're beginning to see the signs of a new ingredient added to the movie-making soup that has started to sour the taste, regardless of the creator's intent. Fan feedback. Oh boy, that's quite a premise, you degenerate. Please elucidate on why that's so problematic, oh wise IGN philosopher king. For us small-minded peasants have not the mental faculty to comprehend this miasma of cultural complexity on our own. Oh. Might I also add that, yes, while it certainly takes the efforts of many people to create a movie, it's not with the intent to entertain, inspire, or connect us as humans. Sure, movies can do that, especially when they're very good, but that's not the reason they get made. No one brings a movie pitch to a studio and gets told, you know what? That sounds like it could absolutely entertain, inspire, and connect us as humans. Here's $100 million. Go make some art. No. What really happens, if you're lucky, is the studio says, we've run the numbers and determined that idea has a reasonable chance of returning a high profit to expense ratio. Here's $100 million, you better make us some motherfucking money. So, don't let this shill media hack get it fucking twisted for you. Movies are made to make money. Any sort of artistic consideration is secondary. He continues. Twitter, Reddit, and the internet in general are places where people can voice their opinions, laugh at memes, and discuss their favorite entertainment properties. But as we all know, social media has become a pretty toxic environment, fueled by having the hottest take or the sickest burn. It can be cathartic, certainly, but when it gets out of hand, it's unrelenting. And when that Sonic the Hedgehog trailer dropped, oh boy, was Twitter unrelenting. Okay, fuckface, I'm with you on your first sentence at least. That is an accurate description of those places on the internet. Sure. But then he follows that up with, as we all know, social media has become a pretty toxic environment. Okay, hold up. What do you mean, as we all know? I don't know that. Do you? I certainly don't agree with that. What do you consider toxic? How are you defining it? Because I'll tell you one thing, if it's in any way related to words typed on the internet, not only are you a fucking pussy, but you're wrong too. Then he says, when it gets out of hand, it's unrelenting. Oh, really? It was unrelenting, was it? How awful that must have been for everybody. So many words appearing on the internet. Oh God, how did anyone survive such a vicious and merciless assault? It must have been total carnage on Twitter with all the words. Yeah, oh, it sounds horrible. Were there any survivors? It's almost like no one was really upset that they just use this type of shit to virtue signal, push an agenda, and vilify anyone that threatens their decrepit, crumbling institutions. This depressing excuse for a writer then goes on to almost completely invalidate his entire premise just within the first couple paragraphs by admitting that he thinks the new design is 1,000 times better than the original and has a chance to make for better ticket sales. Okay, so you just said that you think the change in Sonic's design will increase the money made by the product whose purpose it is to make money. Still not seeing a problem here, genius. Not one to be outdone or defeated by something so simple as demonstrably incorrect logic, he then goes on to lament the poor artists and filmmakers who spent months creating the initial version of the character, only to be scrutinized on social media for a week straight. Yeah, and what does being scrutinized on social media feel like anyway? Does it hurt? I've never been scrutinized on the internet before. These people got fucking paid to do their work, didn't they? And they did a shit job, so their bosses made them do it again. You may then say, well, wait, who's to say what a shit job is for a creative person? Oh, don't worry, I'll tell you. It's the people whose approval pays their fucking salaries. In other words, us, the customers. If we don't want to spend our money on whatever they've created, you failed. Okay? It's really that simple. And also, in what way does this differ from any other industry anywhere on the planet? If I do a shit job on something at work, you pay your ass, my boss is making me do that motherfucker over. And I don't get to complain about it on Twitter afterwards either, or have people on social media fall all over themselves to elevate me to sainthood and put me on a pedestal. No one comes valiantly to my rescue, and no access media white knights are waiting to cradle my head in their bosom while stroking my hair and softly whispering words of encouragement. This sort of narrative is present everywhere, from TV to movies, comics, video games. Creators are now, according to legacy media anyway, supposed to be beyond or above any sort of scrutiny or criticism. And I mean, that's why this is so weird to me, but apparently not to many others. Companies make products to sell to people, make money. They always have, they always will, that's how it works. The more their potential buyers like a product, the more money they'll spend on it. How did it suddenly become so taboo to do things that will make your product more appealing to the people that you want buying it? I don't care if it's a movie, video game, or whatever. The industry narrative has now shifted to maligning any company that, God forbid, wants to please their customers. How or why did this happen? Well, I'll tell you. Because if one game development company or movie studio does something to actually please the customers, all of a sudden it puts a spotlight on anyone not doing it, and then bam, all of a sudden you have everybody everywhere having to spend actual money again to make something good. Obviously, that's a problem. See, this happened because legacy, access, and shill media, they can't allow any voice other than theirs to ever be viewed as legitimate. Traditional media hasn't yet gotten the memo that they don't dictate public opinion anymore. And unfortunately for them, their entire business model is relied upon the fallacy that they do. I'm sorry guys, you had a good run, but the internet is the end of it. You may as well stop fighting it with your smear pieces, fake outrage, and agitprop. You're only causing collateral damage and ruining any meager amount of credibility you may have had left. Don't you guys get it? It's too late. It may have taken a little while for the momentum to really build up, but now it has, and there's no going back. You're never gonna get rid of, smear, or deplatform every single independent content creator, or successfully paint every fan everywhere as a toxic or problematic voice that no one in good conscience should ever listen to. It's not fucking happening. And you're only embarrassing yourselves and further proving our point by putting out obvious agitprop like this stupid fucking article. And of course, speaking of this stupid fucking article, our boy wasn't yet finished humiliating himself. Oh no, not by a long shot. He continues to bluster. This has set a dangerous precedent for artists working in the film industry. Now, storytellers are at the behest of their audience, telling them what to do and how to do it before they've even seen the final film, rather than letting the artists create their art as they see it and then responding to their efforts. First of all, no it hasn't, and no they aren't. Notice how this guy tries to paint the poor artists and storytellers as the victim here, when in fact there aren't any victims at all. You think these ground level guys are the people making the creative decisions for this movie? Or any movie? Fuck no. It's the corporate higher-ups, the studio execs and producers that make these decisions, not the fucking foot floggers in the trenches doing the grunt work for the CGI. And need I remind everyone, these are employees being paid to do a job. Paid by us, the customer, I might add. They aren't enslaved or being forced to produce outrageous amounts of work, toiling beneath the fierce lash of their oppressive overseers. And they aren't at the behest of their audience either. This guy makes it seem like due to legions of people harassing them and stoning them in the streets and criticizing their delicate and pure artistic vision, that they've been forced to spend hundreds of hours slaving away just to appease the fickle whims of the unwashed, bloodthirsty masses. Quite obviously, this isn't the case. The people making movies or games are definitely at the behest of someone though, but it's not 6 angry idiots on Twitter, it's their fucking boss, just like anyone else. And just like any other employee of any other industry, they have to listen to their fucking boss. And what does the boss want? The boss wants to make fucking money. And if they have a credible reason to believe no one will buy whatever product it is they are making, you can fucking bet that they'll change it. You're fucking delusional if you think any company is going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to change something based solely on the opinion of a tiny, infinitesimal vocal minority on the internet. Remember those numbers on Twitter and Reddit users from earlier? Took me about 2 minutes to find that information, and I'm a fucking retard. What makes you think a company with potentially billions of dollars on the line doesn't have access to not only that information, but much more? Far in excess of any publicly available statistics that anyone with Google can pull up. They know what a minority the loud whiners on social media are, and I can promise you they aren't wasting money changing the artistic direction of an entire fucking movie based only on that. A multi-billion-dollar publisher or movie studio, whatever, is an enormous corporate and financial entity. Doesn't turn quickly or on a whim. Of course, this has always been the case. It's not new. The only thing new is that now legacy media has competition. All entertainment media has a long history of course correcting whenever it's become clear that their direction is going to lose them money. The only thing that's different is that many of the people voicing their opinion now are also the people helping to drive traditional access media into its fucking grave. And that, naturally, is the sweet spot in the Venn diagram that's causing them to be attacked and slandered. We don't need to click links on your website anymore, IGN. We don't need to wait for the ivory tower elites with their access to tell us what game is good on Kotaku, or for some activist on Polygon to tell us what we shouldn't buy because it's problematic. We just bust open a new tab and look for a video or article by someone we trust, which, hint, isn't any of you. And that's a problem for these slimy fucks. They can't control those people. They can't stop them from saying things that, I don't know, might highlight just how egregiously compromised the people at IGN are, or maybe put into stark contrast what actual service journalism looks like when compared to, an activist writing slop for Polygon. As a result, revenue's been falling across the board. Hooray! For all mainstream journalism outlets. They're panicking. You see this everywhere, from comic books to movies, CNN to Destructoid. It's quickly become very obvious, at least to those of us who pay attention, that the primary purpose for any traditional media platform is and has always been to push a narrative and to help sell something. Whether that something is an idea, a politician, a comic book, or a video game, and having real competition that isn't bought and paid for by corporations with an agenda to protect, makes that fact all the more easy to point out. So, anyway, this guy continues to flail about helplessly, trying to indict anyone who wants to see the Snyder Cut of Justice League as some sort of internet criminal, while simultaneously making a mockery of the English language. We can skip this part. He then, however, proceeds to aim his flaccid penis at Star Wars. This time it wasn't ugly CG or any sort of aesthetic issue that needed fixing. Instead, 2 years of outrage over Rian Johnson's Star Wars The Last Jedi seemingly convinced Disney that they needed to focus on making fans happy. Oh God, how horrifying! Making fans happy? No, anything but that. And nostalgic, to appease those who hated The Last Jedi, which was pretty much everybody, while also wrapping up the Skywalker saga in a way that would satisfy both. So the writers tried to do that, but when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody. Oh God, there's just so much incorrect bullshit here. So I'll just go ahead and rephrase real quick. After profits from movies and toys fell off a fucking cliff following the release of The Last Jedi, the most divisive film in the franchise's 40-year history, the people in charge wisely decided to change their approach in hopes they could turn profits around. Okay? Need it more simple? Okay. Smart company does smart thing by doing what makes them money. There, fixed it for you. Look how easy that was, and I didn't even need to lie, shill, or white knight for any billion-dollar corporations. But then again, I don't get my paycheck from a company bought and paid for by that same corporation. And that's the point. The only thing I will agree with here is that when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody. Great. That's some amazing insight there. You managed to drag out a third grade level platitude. Truly fantastic work. I'm in awe of your talents. This guy continues to whine, but I'll spare you most of it. Until, of course, we get to this gem. Rather than continuing on from what The Last Jedi offered them, Disney apparently felt they had to course correct per what they thought a vocal segment of the upset fans wanted. As I explained earlier, this is just patently false and egregious and irresponsible presumption posited as fact by a hack writer shilling for the chosen agenda of his failing platform. In what universe does a company the size of Disney, with a market cap of over $250 billion fucking dollars, throw around 300 mil based on the whims of less than 1% of the population? And remember, it's actually even less than that. According to our earlier estimates, it's probably roughly 500,000 people or less that engage in any way with movies or video games on Twitter. 500,000. You know how many people saw The Last Jedi in the US? 41 million. You really think any studio exec is out here altering shit based on the whining of barely a few thousand idiots? Right. That just doesn't make any fucking sense. In order for that to occur, one would need to believe that the Walt fucking Disney Corporation, one of the largest entertainment companies on the planet, does zero market research and spends zero on analytics. Which, of course, no one would believe because it's fucking insane. So this guy is saying that Walt fucking Disney, while making Rise of Skywalker, did nothing but refresh Twitter a few times and then said, oh, okay, let's go with that, based on what they saw. That's absolute madness, and I seriously doubt that anyone, including the vacuous fuckbag that wrote this swill, believes it. I know it's hard to grasp, but this incredibly gets worse, and no, we're not quite done yet. Please bear with me, guys, I'm really trying to help here. So next, the talentless loser behind this pile of literary tripe moves on to attacking Ghostbusters. Looking forward, Ghostbusters Afterlife seems to be the next movie to attempt a franchise course correction based on fan backlash. Again with this intentionally misleading disquisition. Stop with this shit. No one believes that backlash on the internet created by barely a few thousand idiots has any effect on what a multi-billion-dollar corporation does or how they spend their money. Just no one believes that. What you do with your wallet can change things, not your fucking insipid tweet. Okay? That's not what the Ghostbusters franchise course correction was based on. No, the course correction was based on the same exact thing every other fucking franchise course correction has been based on since, I don't know, the dawn of entertainment media. Money. Ghostbusters 2016 lost over $70 million fucking dollars. That's why they're trying something different this time. They don't want to lose any more fucking money. They don't give a shit about Twitter. They're looking at box office numbers. They're looking at how much money they made. It certainly would be a horrible business move to go and try to do the same thing again when it obviously didn't work the first time, don't you think? What studio head in their right mind would ever sign off on that? Fuck your feelings. These people want to make their money. It's an odd coincidence, don't you think, that the position of the people pushing back against the agendas here also seems to be represented in the box office numbers? See, that's why this author and the rest of legacy media want to dismiss and invalidate our opinions, because the fucking numbers prove that we're right. Alright, so this guy keeps blathering on, whining in the insincere and specious fashion so typical of legacy media zealots these days, and essentially just trying to say the same thing over and over. In my infinite mercy, I've decided to spare you from having to experience any more of it, and let's be honest, I myself have probably droned on for more than long enough as it is. Though I must apologize, as I can't release you quite yet. The conclusion to this pile of excrement disguised as an article is so fucking egregious, I simply cannot stop myself from tearing it apart and trying to teach y'all something in the process. If the future is to be determined by the fans, oh god, how horrible would that be? The film industry will only make more sequels, reboots, and unoriginal play-it-safe movies. Oh, really? You're saying we've been asking for all this garbage? It's been the fans that have demanded Hollywood rape and pillage our childhoods in pursuit of increasingly easy revenue streams with trashy, low-effort reboots, rehashes, and sequels. That's what we wanted. It was us that demanded that they drag the elegant corpse of the Ghostbusters franchise out from its resting place of veneration and then force us to pay $15 to watch while they violated it repeatedly in the most hideous ways imaginable. It was the fans that insisted you force poor Arnie and Linda Hamilton into an embarrassing and cheap Terminator franchise cash-in. I don't recall anyone begging for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to be trudged out in mortifyingly low-effort CGI and then paraded around in front of fucking Megan Fox, of all people. Or fucking Child's Play, or It, or The Lion King, or Aladdin, or Willy Wonka, or Star Trek, or fucking, well, you get the point. No fans wanted any of that. You know who did want that? The people who pay your salary. Studio execs trying to make money. Easy money. Quick money. And they've been doing it since well before Twitter's unholy birth. So, again, this is just a flat out lie, and an obvious one at that. Don't pin this on us, you hack fuck. The only reason you're parroting this is because it supports the legacy media narrative that you push by the people you work for, which enshrines themselves as the only responsible, morally defensible, legitimate voice, and condemning all others as toxic, dangerous, or problematic dissenters that shouldn't ever be validated or endorsed. It's all fine and good for fans to be listened to, providing they're preaching a narrative-approved schema like tolerance and open-mindedness, but as soon as anyone mentions something that may be harmful or counterproductive to your agenda, all of a sudden it's toxic, problematic, and must be shut down. Girl, that's an old song. And that, right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the true purpose behind this entire article, and indeed, pretty much everything put out by legacy media these days. It's all nothing but agitation propaganda designed to marginalize and silence the very people whose honest, passionate content is the biggest threat to their narrative stranglehold on the industry. When you don't operate in their frame, however, you can really just see this shit for what it is. But if you do get caught up in their frame, before you even realize it, you'll be arguing against common sense for some shit that's fucking self-evident to everyone else, just like this poor fucker here who wrote the article we've so thoroughly eviscerated. So yeah, pretty fucking depressing, right? I know. But I did promise to end on an optimistic note, and that's what we're gonna do. Incredibly, I actually believe this is getting better. I think what we're seeing, what we've been seeing since around the time of Gamergate, maybe a little earlier, is just the growing pains of the internet. The awkward teenage years of the human race as it desperately struggles to adjust to an era of instantaneous global communication. Seems only natural there would be some stumbling along the way, right? Some accidental canceling of some people's entire careers or lives, as the case may be. Oh well, gotta break some eggs to make an omelet, isn't that right, Zoe Quinn? Remember when you were a kid and all you wanted to eat was junk food and ice cream and shit, but your parents wouldn't let you? You probably fucking hated them for that, right? And you didn't understand why they wouldn't just let you eat whatever you wanted. Then, the very first chance you had, you pigged out on all that shit and you ended up getting sick and puking your guts out. It wasn't until you spent that night over the toilet that you finally learned your lesson about moderation and balance and what happens when no one stops you from taking shit a little too far. You learn sometimes you need to dial shit the fuck back on your own. The internet and social media are a lot like that. Little kids eating ice cream and pizza for every meal because all of a sudden mommy isn't around to stop them, gorging themselves on a disgusting diet of selfies, likes, rage bait, and virtue signals. Now, many of us already learned our lesson years ago. Maybe you grew up with the beginning internet in the 90s like me, or maybe you're just not a fucking idiot and instinctively know some things can be harmful if not treated with respect. Great power, great responsibility, all that shit. But the majority of people, they haven't, and they're too dumb to figure out anything for themselves until they learn it the hard way and spend a night puking their fucking guts out. But I do think they're learning. Slowly, painfully, but they're learning. After all, shit can't stay like this forever, right? Right? Oh God, the horror. Wow, that ran pretty fucking long. If any of you listened through this whole thing, I congratulate you, and we truly do appreciate it. That is our show for the week. Thank you so much for chilling with us tonight. We love you today. We really do love you all the way. Remember not to like, comment, or subscribe. Why? Oh, I don't know. Cause I wanted to redecorate, a couple throw pillows, a TV news reporter. What do you think?